My name is Michael Hartman, and for as long as I can remember, that stretch of land behind my grandfather's farmhouse was more than soil. did it thought I'd never look closely. But they were wrong. Then, one day, a letter came in the mail. From the Homeowners Association, the HOA. It said I was trespassing on private property and disturbing residents. I smiled when I read it. The irony almost made me laugh. They were accusing me of trespassing on my own land. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it in my file. Another piece of evidence. Another nail in their coffin. After that, I stayed away completely. Let them build. Let them sell. Let the HOA plant flowers and hold meetings. Let the kids ride their bikes where my grandfather's corn used to grow. I waited through the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the news coverage, the "Now open" signs. I waited until every lot was sold, every home occupied, every contract finalized. I waited until there was no way out for them. Because when a man has nothing left to lose, he learns the power of patience. When everything was finished, every brick, every home, every driveway, I went back to the county courthouse with a single envelope. Inside it was my original deed, notarized decades ago, and a record of every fraudulent transfer that followed. I filed it quietly, no cameras, no lawyers, no noise. Just me and the truth. The whole structure starts to crack. I still remember the first phone call I got. It was from one of the lawyers representing the HOA. Polite voice, careful tone. scandal. The man who took back a town. Local farmer destroys suburban paradise. They made it sound like vengeance. But they didn't see the years of silence, the loss, the patience it took to wait. At night, I sat on my porch again, the same way I had years before. Only now, the air felt heavier. I looked at the lights from the meadows, bright, perfect, artificial. They shimmered across the hill like a wound that refused to close. I knew the fight wasn't over. The developers wouldn't go down quietly. Money doesn't disappear, it adapts. Power doesn't accept defeat, it manipulates. A week later, I got a letter from a new law firm, sleek logo, expensive paper. They wanted to revisit the terms of property ownership. I didn't even open the rest. Straight into the fire it went. Then came the visits. County officials, real estate consultants, even a few polite strangers pretending to be neighbors just wanting to talk. But their eyes gave them away. They weren't there for peace. They were there to convince me, to scare me, maybe even to buy me out quietly. One man, well-dressed, confident, smiled as he handed me a folder. "Mr. Hartman," he said, "we can make this easy. Name your price. Whatever you want, we'll pay it." I stared at him for a long time, then said softly, "You already did. You paid with honesty, trust, and decency. And you lost all three." He smiled thinner. "Be reasonable." "I was," I said. "For years." That shut him up. When he left, he warned me, "You're making powerful enemies." I looked him dead in the eyes. I was raised on harder ground than this. After that, the pressure grew. Anonymous calls at night. Papers slipped under my door. Offers, threats, half-promises. I ignored them all. But inside, I could feel something shifting. This wasn't just a legal fight anymore. It was personal, and not just for me. The people living in those houses, they were caught in the middle. Families, kids, old couples who'd spent their savings on a dream they didn't know was built on stolen land. Some of them started reaching out. A woman named Sarah knocked on my door one evening. She was trembling when I opened it. "Mr. Hartman?" she asked. "Can I talk to you?" I nodded and invited her in. She held her hands tight together as she sat down. "I didn't know," she said quickly, almost pleading. "I swear, we didn't know any of this when we bought our house. We thought it was safe. We thought," her voice broke, "we thought it was ours." I sat quietly, listening. She looked up at me, eyes red. "What happens to us now?" I didn't have an answer right then. Part of me wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault. Another part of me, the part that remembered the sound of bulldozers crushing my grandfather's oak tree, wanted to remind her that ignorance doesn't erase damage. But when I looked at her, I saw fear, not greed. And for the first time, I realized this story had stopped being about revenge. It was about truth. I leaned back in my chair. "Sarah," I said slowly, "you were lied to, just like I was. You don't need to be afraid of me. But the people who sold you that lie, they should be terrified." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. Before she left, she said, "I hope you win. But I also hope we can all find a way to live here somehow." That sentence stayed with me. Over the next month, more homeowners reached out. Some begged me not to take the land back. Others offered apologies. A few even offered to help. But behind every voice, I could hear the same thing, fear of losing everything. It was strange. They were strangers, yet we were tied together by the same betrayal. Meanwhile, the developers were fighting like cornered wolves. They appealed the decision, filed injunctions, tried every trick in the book. Their lawyers argued that public interest required the community woke to flashing lights outside my gate. News vans, microphones, cameras. Someone had leaked the story. They shouted questions as I walked out. Mr. Hartman, how do you respond to allegations that you're destroying a neighborhood? Are you The laughter of children carried through the wind, soft and haunting. I'd listen, eyes open in the dark, wondering if they'd still laugh when they learned the truth. The media had shifted again. They called me the quiet storm. They painted me as as victims of this fraud. Therefore, Mr. Hartman will retain full ownership rights but must enter into negotiations for legal occupancy. The same fields that once stretched wild and open now carried roofs, driveways, mailboxes. But beneath it all, the soil was still the same, and so was I. Just older. Wiser. More tired maybe, but not broken. The next day, I called my attorney. "I want to meet with the homeowners," I said. He paused. "All of them?" "All of them." It took 2 weeks to arrange. They gathered in the community hall, the one built right where my grandfather's barn used to stand. I stood at the front, facing the people who, for months, had seen me as the villain. Some crossed their arms. Some glared. Some just waited. "I know most of you don't trust me," I began. "And I don't blame you. You were lied to, by people who used my name, my land, and your dreams for their own gain. You didn't steal from me. You were stolen from, same as I was. The room was quiet. A few heads nodded. I can't undo what's been done, I continued, but I can make sure the future isn't built on lies. So here's what I'm offering. Every family here will get a fair lease agreement, permanent residency rights, and full credit toward ownership once we rebuild this community properly. Together. A murmur spread through the crowd. Confusion. Relief. Disbelief. One man stood. Why would you do that? After all the trouble we caused you? I looked around the room, at faces lined with fear, hope, exhaustion. Because this land doesn't belong to one man, I said softly. It belongs belong to it. We just borrow it for a while. She turned to me. Do you ever regret it? Everything you went through? I thought for a long time. The lawsuits, the headlines, the loneliness, the anger, they all passed through my mind like pages turning in a book I'd finally finished. No, I said quietly. If I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't have carried the faint scent of rain, and the distant laughter of children rolled through the valley. Then Sarah said something I'd remember forever. You know, maybe the land remembers forgiveness too. Her words hit deeper than she probably realized. Because for the first time in my life, I felt it. The quiet truth that maybe all of this, every storm and every scar, had been leading here. A place of peace. A few weeks later, the community held a festival. the first ever Oak Hill Harvest Fair. It was Sarah's idea. She wanted to celebrate the new beginning, as she called it. The whole town showed up. Booths lined the streets. Kids sold lemonade. A small band played under the oak tree at the center of the park. When I arrived, people greeted me with smiles, handshakes, even hugs. The same people who once saw me as the enemy now saw me as it teaches us how to begin again. I closed the journal, placed it on the shelf beside an old photograph of my grandfather, and smiled. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees, carrying the soft hum of voices and laughter from the meadows. And in that sound, I found everything I'd ever fought for: home.